Well, for more on the release of Mark Fogel, we head to Berkeley, California, and Professor Stephen Fish, author of Democracy Derailed in Russia, The Failure of Open Politics. Professor, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
So a big unknown right now is, what did Russia get from the US in return for Fogel? That question was put directly to the president a number of times. Here's how he answered it.
Did the US get anything in return?
Not much. No, they were very nice. We were treated very nicely by Russia, actually. I hope that's the beginning of a relationship where we can end that war and millions of people can stop being killed.
That war is Vladimir Putin's war of choice in Ukraine. So connect the dots here as best you can. What does Fogel's release actually mean for an end to the war in Ukraine?
John, bigger picture, you just got it from Trump. He's trying to create the impression that Putin gave him something of consequence, which will cover Trump a bit, or so he hopes, as he moves forward with his plan that I think we can guess will probably be very favorable to Putin. So Putin knows what he's doing. He's throwing Trump a little bone here, and this he thinks will help free Trump to pursue a plan that, by many people's predictions, is not going to be friendly to Ukrainian interests.
Yeah, a statement from the White House National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, described Fogel's release as an exchange. Here's part of that official announcement. President Donald J. Trump and his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, are able to announce that Mr. Witkoff is leaving Russian airspace with Mark Fogel. President Trump, Steve Witkoff, and the president's advisors negotiated an exchange that serves as a good faith from the Russians and a sign we are moving in the right direction to end the brutal and terrible war in Ukraine. That announcement would seem to indicate that envoy Steve Witkoff is the first US official to visit Moscow since the Russian invasion of Ukraine back in 2022. There's also claims about moving in the right direction, that kind of thing. In many ways, I guess we're reading tea leaves, but it seems that there is momentum here on Ukraine. And what would be the likely next development? What would you expect to come next?
Well, we're going to get a lot of news very quickly. I think what's probably going to happen is that Trump is going to weigh in very strongly on the side of Putin. That would be my prediction. Putin wants to keep these conquered territories in Ukraine, and Trump, I think, is probably going to be very friendly to that. Remember, Trump, like Putin, has this kind of great powers, spheres of influence view of the world. Trump is talking about annexing Greenland, about taking back the Panama Canal, about annexing Canada. And in that worldview, that's a kind of spheres of influence view where great powers kind of dominate their neighborhoods. And this is something that is music to the ears of the Kremlin right now, because the Kremlin wants, of course, Ukraine back. Trump actually said just today that perhaps Ukraine will be Russia. Perhaps it won't. You can imagine how that's going down in Ukraine and how that's going down in Russia. I think we can look forward to, or dread, as the case may be, a very Putin-friendly move on the part of Trump. Now, the question is whether the Europeans will then step up and take leadership under conditions in which it seems like the United States might be selling out Ukrainian interests. That's an important thing to keep our eye on.
With that in mind, if there is a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, US President is ready for his payday. Here he is.
They have tremendously valuable land in terms of rare earth, in terms of oil and gas, in terms of other things. I want to have our money secured because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal, they may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have all this money in there. And I say, I want it back.
There he is, just throwing it out there. Maybe Russians one day. As you say, that probably went down like a lead balloon in Ukraine. But you know, from this president, it seems it's all very transactional. You're defending democracy and freedom, standing up for what's right, fighting Russian aggression. You know, that sort of just doesn't really count for anything. What Donald Trump wants here is Ukraine to pay up. And the Ukrainians have actually agreed in part to this. But ultimately, what do you think the US will get out of any kind of peace deal with Ukrainians? How bad is this likely to be for the Ukrainians?
It could be quite bad for the Ukrainians, but it's also going to be very bad for the Americans. Look, I mean, Putin, if anybody thinks that Putin's going to cut a deal and then just go home and want nothing but peace with Ukraine after this, they're really deluding themselves. Putin's plan, if he gets what he wants, is to take his troops, go home, rearm, and prepare for his next invasion of Ukraine or pressuring Ukraine. Putin has never accepted Ukraine's sovereignty as a sovereign state. Look, the United States has long defined its interests as protection of its own allies, and preeminently its European allies. That's in America's interests. Trump is acting as if that isn't an American concern at all. He's abandoning the entire post-war world order in terms of the way the United States supports its allies. Supporting Ukraine is in America's interest because it helps support not only a fellow democracy, but also European security. Trump has this weird transactional view of the world where it's all just about money. It's all about us getting money that we spent on defending Ukraine without any kind of broader notion of American interests in the world. This could be very deleterious not only to the world order, but to American interests as well.
Steve, thank you for being with us. Some really good points there. Some great analysis of what this actually means in real time. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.